Hi, Andrew from SACS. I'm often asked about the difference between engagement surveying and wellbeing surveying. And engagement surveying measures some things that are really important to wellbeing, because we know that when people have high levels of work engagement, they are psychologically healthier and in some cases physically more well than people who have low levels of work engagement. But a wellbeing survey typically measures some other stuff, which is not just engagement, but which is really important to understand in respect of people's levels of well-being at work. So this is a brief explainer video to explain to you how all of this works and what the extra components are in a well-being survey. But first, let's talk about engagement. So a science-based approach to engagement is this one from Bakker in 2011, wrote an article which unified our perspective on what engagement is at work. And he discovered through a meta-analytical approach where you reanalyze many studies that engagement can be held to have three really important characteristics. The first is vigor. So vigor is a sense of energy in your work. I want to get to work. I feel excited by my work. I feel energized by my work. The second is dedication, and that's where I'm committed. I take my work very seriously. I try to get better at it. And the third is absorption, and that's where people get immersed in their work, happily engrossed in their work, so that time flies while they're doing their work. They're really enjoying their work. So when people have these three characteristics, we know that this is good for them. They tend to be happy at work. They tend to be more productive at work. Psychological research shows that they create better quality work. They have happier customers and stakeholders. So it's good for both the organisation and for the individual. So this leads us to the question of corporate culture and what drives corporate culture. But first, a definition of corporate culture. In organisational psychology these days, we take the view that culture is in fact the balance of experiences that you have at work. So if you have 6 good experiences for every bad experience, chances are this is an acceptable or a favourable corporate culture. If you have 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 good experiences for every bad experience, then that's even better. I mean, that's a really positive corporate culture. If you have, say, 3 good experiences for every 1 bad experience, then that's a bad corporate culture. Now, why? Well, bad experiences have more impact on us than good experiences. That's the simple psychological valency of these things. But what do we mean by experiences? Let's talk about the sorts of things that affect people's experience at work. And really there are 4 key things that affect whether people are likely to have high levels of engagement and well-being at work. And the first is the job that they do. So here are some aspects of a person's job that are really important to them. Are they optimistic about where their job's going? Do they have variety work? Those kinds of things. Then there are team characteristics. In other words, the colleagues that I work with every day have a big impact on my levels of engagement and well-being. And then the leader I report to. Here are 10 characteristics that have a big impact on my levels of well-being by virtue of the fact that my leader influences the environment that I work in, and that can have a big impact on my well-being. And finally, the organisation I work for. Important, but nowhere near as important as these first 3, which is to say that the job, the team, and the leader have the biggest impact on my well-being, and the organisation less so. So over on the right-hand side here, you see some predictors of engagement. This was a study of some thousands of people that we undertook going back 5 or 6 years ago, where we measured the levels of engagement of people at work, and we measured the things that predicted this level of engagement. And we were able to predict their levels of engagement with about 64% accuracy, which is a very high level of prediction. And you'll notice that the colour coding here shows you that the most important things are job characteristics, leader characteristics are very important, and team characteristics are very important. And you'll notice that there are no organisational characteristics that come up in the top 10 or so of predictors. And what that says is that if you want to be happy at work, be in a good team, do a job that you love, and work with a leader that you can respect, the organisation that you work for accounts for really only about 20% of people's well-being. 80% comes from the local team that they work in. Culture is local. That's the message that we get from all of this. So those are the things that drive people's levels of engagement. But what about the broader question of well-being? What are some of the characteristics that you should measure in order to assess well-being more generally? Here's one of them, stressors. So there are 2 types of stressors at work, and one of them is good and one of them is bad. In other words, your well-being will increase if you have these stressors and will decrease if you have these stressors. So firstly, what do we mean by stressors? Stressors are experiences that in effect create tension in our nervous system. Now, tension can be good. As we all know, if you've ever been in a job where you're bored, well, that really means that you're not getting necessary stressors. People in zoos know that, for instance, if an animal is not stressed appropriately, it won't live as long. So good stress is a good thing to have. Bad stress is a negative. The positive stressors are what's called challenge demands. They're stressful things, but there may be some payoff in tackling them. Workload. It may interest you to know that very few employees are overworked. It can happen, of course, but most employees increase their level of well-being as their workload increases. Pressure of processing lots of information. If you're in a job where you've got to work things out, that can be a positive stressor, and the pressure of problem solving. So it paints the picture of having a lot of work to do, but having work to do which is intellectually challenging. The negative stressors, the hindrance demands, are things that really bring you down, and they are things like role ambiguity. People love to know where the goalposts are in their work. They love to know what the job is all about. Role conflict, where people are asking you to do different things within the one job. So Mary Smith asks me to do this, Bill Jones asks me to do this, and I can't reconcile them. That's a negative stressor. And finally, emotional demands such as being treated disrespectfully by your colleagues. So in effect, that's a sort of a social exclusion kind of an effect. And human beings really don't enjoy social exclusion. We are social primates, so we need to be included. So you can understand that if we include measures of stressors, this helps to transition an engagement survey into a well-being survey. Then we can measure stress itself. And so stress has a number of components, and overall stress is really the question of the degree to which our nervous system is stressed by the environment that we're in. And so this also comes in two forms, but both of these are negative. So pressurized stress is where we're experiencing pressure and tension at work. In other words, we can't relax and we're finding that this is getting on top of us. And the second component is psychologically distressed, where we're experiencing negative emotions such as anxiety or depression from the pressure that we're under. So to create a wellbeing survey, we recommend that you measure stressors and then you measure stress. So if a person is experiencing mainly positive stressors, you'll see that in increased levels of engagement. If they're experiencing mainly negative stressors, that will bring down the levels of engagement, but it will also bring up the levels of psychological stress, which is all about being pressurized and being psychologically distressed. Another component that we recommend to be included in a wellbeing survey is diversity climate. And diversity climate is really the perception of the employees that the organisation is committed to diversity. Now, there's lots of research that indicates where an organisation is committed to diversity. That could be ethnic diversity, it could be lifestyle diversity, it could be gender diversity, whatever the diversity question is. We know that organisations who are committed to diversity tend to have higher levels of well-being amongst their employees. So this is worth measuring, as Reinwald et al. In 2019 were able to show. So that's what a true wellbeing survey is. The SACS wellbeing survey instrument measures everything that we've shown you so far. It measures all of the characteristics of engagement and its three components. It measures the job, team, leader and organisational characteristics, which we showed you earlier, and it gives you a chance to see those results in comparison with other organisations by reporting these results as percentiles. So 50th percentile is population average, 90th percentile puts you in the top 10% of Australian and New Zealand companies. It also measures stressors, and it measures stress, and it measures diversity climate. So if you'd like to find out more and maybe see example reports or something like that, click on the link near this video.